So today's webinar is, again, this is probably one of the more important webinars you ever watch, whether or not you're a partner or a law student or a practicing attorney, to understand really the easiest way to get positions in law firms. And I can tell you that what I'm going to talk to you about today is something that I've used to make thousands of placements by framing candidates in a certain way to law firms or finding law firms that are going to hire people based on what I'm going to talk about. And one of the first things that you need to understand, and that's very important, is anytime you're interviewing with a law firm, like you're talking to a law firm or you're soliciting applications by applying places, essentially the way to think about any person that you're talking to or any law firm that you're applying to is they are a client. So what does that mean? That means that you go into interviews in the same way you would go into an interview with a client, and you try to find out what that client needs and how you can help them solve a problem. And for law firms, the problem typically is making money. So law firms want to make money. And anytime that they're interviewing you, that's their main concern is, can they make money from you? And people don't often understand that. They go in to law firms with all sorts of preconceptions and all sorts of ways of thinking about how they're going to talk to the law firm, but they never really think in the background, how is this law firm going to make money for me, and how can I show them that I can make them money? Or if they're making lots of money, how can I make them more money? Or how can I find, what do I do that's going to make them money? And that's really what everything comes down to when you're talking to law firms. When I hire people, and I hire people all the time, several times a month. I hire people. I bring people on to do jobs that typically aren't being done, and that I'm not, that if I hire them, the cost of them is going to be less than the amount of money I make. So if I hire someone to, for example, help me with my LinkedIn account and pay them $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month, my calculation is that I'm going to make more than that amount of money by getting candidates and by having a good brand, interacting with people, by doing more posting. So I make a money calculation for anyone I hire. If I hire someone to assist me with setting up appointments and pay them a certain amount per month, I'm hiring them based on the idea that I'm going to make more money by having someone professionally, excuse me, set up appointments than I would make without them. If I hire a recruiter, I'm hiring them based on the idea that that person can make me money. So every time someone hires someone, that's what they're thinking about in the background. Can this person make me money? If a law firm partner is hiring you, and they are hiring you because they think that you can do work that will make them money, that will make them a lot more money than if they don't hire you. That's all they're thinking in the background. Or they can give you work and they can go out and generate more work. I mean, these are all kind of the thoughts that are going on in people's background. So that's the number one question. And your practice area will determine whether or not they think they can make money off you. Your experience in a practice area, working in a law firm and getting trained, will determine whether or not they can make money off you. Your enthusiasm for whatever they're doing will determine whether or not they can make money off you. Your location where you're looking for a job will determine whether or not they can make money off you. Are there not enough people like you in that location? All these sorts of things, hours that aren't getting done, lawsuits that aren't getting filed, discovery that's not being responded to, business lines of business that could be expanded, and partners. That's like the number one calculation that they have when they're interviewing a partner. Like, can this partner make me money with their business? Like, if we bring in someone and they have $2 million in business, we can pay them $600,000 or $700,000 a year, and we will essentially have $1.3 million in our firm that we wouldn't have without them. So this is how, or if the partner doesn't have any business, they can do all this work that we have that is not getting done, that we could be making a lot of money off of. And when people are thinking about making money off you, by the way, they're thinking about making a lot of money. Like, they're going to pay you typically like 1/3 or less, 20% of the money that they think you're going to bring in. So you are a profit center. All these decisions about hiring people are only about, really, when it comes down to it, about money. Now, law firms do make bad decisions, like they bring in people where they're not going to make money. and they make that mistake all the time, and they make it for a bunch of different reasons. I'm going to tell you how to find firms like that, but at the same time, you just need to understand that any way you present yourself as hardworking, you present yourself as someone that can do a certain type of work, you present yourself as someone that may be rare in the market. Like in certain markets, there's just not enough people. The law firm will think, well, if we bring this person in, we can start doing more of this type of work for our clients. I see the weirdest thing all the time. I have some trust and estates cancer interviewing right now, and I've got one of them that's interviewing at like a firm that only does patent work, but they have some patent clients that are asking them for trust and estates work for whatever reason. And so they're trying to hire trust and estates attorneys. I mean, it's just crazy. Like and there's certain practice areas like trust and estates is one of them where law firms are just getting all these inquiries and can't do the work. So anytime they see a trust and estates attorney, like they're, jumping on it. So you have to think about too, if you were hiring someone, that's really what they're thinking about. So you have to understand how you present yourself. You have to understand how the legal market works. You have to understand how people make hiring decisions, because every hiring decision is ultimately about someone making money from you. And when I work with BCG candidates, by the way, like when I send them to firms, I will tell firms, like, this person is an expert in this practice area. Like they could bill out $500-600 an hour, whatever I think the firm will pay, and you will generate at least $1 million a year from their work at $600 an hour, and this person can be immediately profitable. And law firms like that. I mean, people that run law firms make a lot of money sometimes, and they make it because they're making money off the people that they hire. So just understand, when you're talking to someone, they have a problem to solve, and the problem is that usually work's not getting done, or they can make more money by hiring you. And just so you understand how powerful this idea is, like when you're applying to job openings on Indeed or Law Crossing or LinkedIn or whatever site you're using, you are essentially, law firms are saying that we need people that we can make money from, and they're going to hire the person where they feel like they can best make money from. And that's just kind of how it works. But oftentimes, more times, 85% of the placements that I make are with firms that don't have openings. So all I'm doing essentially is sending out a business proposition saying, you could make money off this person if you have the work. And those law firms see that and they're like, oh yeah, we could. And so then they bring in people and they interview people and hire them because they think that they can make money. And I just want to make kind of one final point before we get into the webinar. And this is a live webinar, by the way. So any questions you have during the webinar, I will answer and at the end of the webinar. So, if you have questions that you think about, you can put them in the chat right now or throughout the webinar, and at the end of the webinar, I will answer them. So as long as it takes, but you just need to understand that idea. When an investment bank, by the way, is marketing a business, so people go to investment banks all the time. I'll talk a little bit about this. But when an investment bank is marketing a business, all they're doing the same thing a recruiter does, by the way. A good recruiter, they're going out and they're identifying different businesses in the market that could potentially buy this business, that they have a need, or they have other businesses, like they might be a private equity firm that owns businesses, and they're approaching people that don't have any specific statement out on the market that they want to buy business, that they want to buy this type of business usually, but they present it in a way that shows people the value. So you need to start understanding how to present yourself in a way that has value and where people are likely to hire you because they can make money. So I just speak to people all the time where there's a lot of inefficiency going on. So not too long ago, I was speaking with an associate, a large Los Angeles firm. She was earning close to $500,000 in the base plus a bonus. I mean, she was over 600,000, and she wanted to lateral to another firm, and make the same level of compensation. She was in a New York-based law firm in Los Angeles, and she wasn't billing enough hours for the firm. I mean, she was not billing enough hours so that she could make partner, and she had not been indispensable to keep partners. So they weren't going to even make her counsel. They were just going to kind of keep her as a career associate. And she'd been out of law school for over 10 years, had no book of business. And aside from having this job having gone to a top law school and had experience at elite firms, she didn't doing commercial litigation. She didn't have, there was nothing really, special about her. And I explained to her that her ability to get a job paying that much at another firm were slim. And what happens to people, by the way, and you should be very careful about this, young attorneys that work in big firms, often their lifestyle will expand to match their compensation. So they buy houses, they buy cars, they put their kids in different schools. And so they kind of become dependent on that type of income when you have to understand that that may not be something that, doesn't work in the long run. So I'm going to explain to you right now why a law firm doesn't need to pay that much for someone, why it doesn't make sense, and why, to her credit, she found something that paid a lot more than she could make in the market, but a type of position where the clients that they brought in were so large and had such high fees that they needed to charge that she could never develop business. So for most law firms, you can see these high starting salaries and what people make over the years. Having someone with 10 years of experience getting paid $500,000 a year is not necessarily a good business decision for a law firm. And here's the reason why. So there are lots of attorneys from top law schools with no business generation skills, which is the majority of senior litigation attorneys, associates working in law firms who will do that work, but for literally half the amount. So there's no reason for someone to keep paying someone $500,000 a year when that it just doesn't make sense. They can find people from top law schools and things that will cost less than half of that. So it would be difficult for any law firm, if you think about it, to remain competitive if it's charging that much, if the associates are getting paid that much money. So they will do it for a short time, but it's just difficult for the law firm to charge the sorts of rates it would need to pay someone that much money. So, and if someone's leaving a firm, like making that much money, and again, she was making over 600,000 if she billed 1,800 hours or whatever, but there's no reason for a law firm to continue doing that. And so, if someone goes to a new firm, then they're probably not going to be able to bill as many hours many times, and so they just someone's leaving like that, they're not a good risk because the law firm has concluded, or they've concluded, that it's not worth it for them to pay that much money. So thing to understand is that one of the reasons when people become senior in top law firms, the law firms will increase their salary over a certain, annually, but at the same time, it becomes something that doesn't make a good business decision because they can start hiring people to do the same sort of work at a lower level, at a lower price, which is one reason why if you are an attorney at a top firm and switching firms, you're going to be marketable between 2 and 5 years and not when you're senior. So people can stay in firms like that. People can make partner doing that. But one of the things is the reason that they don't is because they haven't sufficiently made themselves indispensable with other partners. And by doing that, they've shown that they're probably not going to be good at getting clients either, because a partner is a client. And so if you're working for a partner or different partners, those are clients, and they're only going to keep you around if they feel like they're going to make a lot of money. And there's other situations, and they're rare, where a law firm, it does make a good business decision for them to pay that much money or even more. The attorney may work in a niche practice area where there's not a lot of attorneys, there's not a lot of people in the market, and the firm needs to hire people like that despite their salary. And it doesn't work in lots of practice areas. It typically doesn't work for litigators because there's so many litigators. It may work for certain types of corporate work or project finance and things at different points in time, but in general, it doesn't work. And so, also if someone, comes in at a higher pay at a new firm, making more money than people, they won't do that. It hurts the firm. It also hurts the firm for a senior attorney if the person comes in at like 8th or 9th year, because that person is competitive for partnership roles that other people that have been there for a longer time. So when law firms are recruiting people out of law school, offering high salaries, even to laterals like your 2 to 5th or 6 year, is a way for them to get good talent. It can also help the retention. It can reduce recruiting costs. It can do also, I mean, it can, it can help in the firm, I guess, and it can help them have a stronger talent pool to better service their clients and so forth. So it can make sense, but in general, you have to understand that anytime you're with a firm, whatever you're getting paid, whatever the work you're being done has to make business sense. And the law firm, if they can, will hire people to work for less. They'll hire people to work for less that may work harder. They'll hire people to work for less that may be able to at one point generate business. And so when you get senior like that, that can help. So there are people where law firms make baffling business decisions. And your goal, if you're looking for a job often, is to find law firms that make baffling business decisions, mean they do not make the best business decisions. And that's just happened. So an example would be I spoke with an attorney about 10 years out of a third tier law school, never worked in a law firm. They didn't do like typical work. They just did investigations for state agencies. And not only that, but the person had switched firms like every 12 to 18 months. They got an offer, incredibly, from a top US law firm paying $350,000 a year. They got that because someone at the firm connected with them, got them pushed through the interview process, and got them hired. And that's not a good decision for a law firm because it's a big risk. And this, you have to understand, like when law firms are making bad decisions, the problem with that. So this particular person didn't have any experience brief writing. They didn't have any experience working in a law firm. The law firm could have hired people much more inexpensively. They could have hired a third year associate from a top firm at not quite half the salary, but much cheaper. And it would have been a better business decision, and that person would have experience. So, firms typically, when you have 7 or 8 years of experience, they push people out to make more room for people that have more potential. And so this particular attorney, no employment stability. It was a risky business decision. The attorney probably won't be there long, but law firms make bad business decisions all the time. And the more places you apply to, the more likely you are to find a firm that makes a baffling business decision. So law firms will make baffling business decisions. They will hire people that they probably shouldn't hire. They will make mistakes. They will bring in people that normally shouldn't be brought in. And the more people you apply to, the more firms you apply to, the more likely you may be to find one of these firms. But not all law firms make good business decisions. But in general, because the market is what it is, the best business decisions will be the ones that where you get jobs. And so you need to understand, like, how do I present myself in a way where the law firm can make a good business decision. And my advice to you is, and I'm going to talk about this right now, and it's very important, is most candidates will present themselves as not the best business decision. And that will happen in their resumes. It will happen in their interviews. It will happen in all these different things in their cover letters that make them seem like they're not good business decisions. So they'll just get weeded out. So how are you a good business decision? So what I do with candidates, like I talked about, is I try to present them, as good business decisions for the firm. So you need to identify firms in your search where you could be a very good business decision for them. And this is everything about getting a job is about how you present yourself as a business decision. Because ultimately, like I told you in the beginning, when I hire people, it's always because I think I can make more money by hiring them. I have no incentive to pay people a salary to bring people on if I'm not going to make money from them. And that's what businesses do. Businesses are always pushing people out that they can't make money from and bringing people in that they think they can make money from. And so that's just how every business works. Businesses will only keep people around unless it's the government or something, which can be a smart business decision for you to go to work there if they hire you and you don't have a lot of accountability. But in most cases, when people are paying for services, they're only going to do things in a way and have people around that are a good business decision. So McDonald's, for example, is not going to have twice the staff it needs working on a shift if they don't have enough people ordering hamburgers. So they make business decisions all the time to only bring in a number of people that they need. And so, and if they don't have enough people and the people aren't getting hamburgers fast enough, then they'll bring in more people. So, and law firms will only keep you employed unless you seem to be like a good business decision. So that what is a good business decision for a law firm? It means you're working hard, you're generating hours, the clients like you, other people like you. And if I submit a resume to a firm, the firm is looking at that candidate as someone that can make the money. That's really what they care about. And you have to understand, how do you look like a good business decision? You can target lots of firms in your search, and firms may bring in people where it's a bad business decision. But if you're interviewing with a firm and you realize they're going to make a bad business decision, they're probably not going to keep you around very long. And so you need to understand how these business decisions work. And I'm going to talk about them right now. These are very, very important: how you present yourself, how law firms look at you, and understanding how that is. So the big thing I told you about is, can the law firm make money from you? So they're going to ask if they have enough work to make money from you. And if they have the work, can they generate additional work based on hiring you? Like I talked to you about with the trust and estates attorney. If you're a partner, the law firm will look at you as someone. Can they make money from you based on your business, or do they have enough work in your practice area? And then the law firm will also ask, do they anticipate opportunities where they can generate revenue through this hire? I was placed, I got a job at a law firm called Dewey Ballantyne when I was a second or third year attorney. And the law firm brought me in because they thought they were going to get this huge case. They didn't get the huge case. So I got in there and I didn't have any work for like 3 weeks, and maybe a little bit longer, because they made this business decision and anticipating work, and it never came in. So that was really, they took a risk, and I didn't know that they were hiring me for that, but that's an issue. The law firm will also ask if they can afford you, or how much are they going to pay you based on the anticipated work that they have. They'll ask if maybe you can help attract clients based on something. So people that come out of like high ranking roles in the government, people will hire them because they think that that will attract people. They will hire people that in a practice area where they may not be doing enough work, because they think they can get work. Sometimes, like I told you, they'll look at your background or your reputation. So you could be a former politician, you could be a U.S. attorney, and they need things, and they may think that they can leverage that to generate, business. And most of my placements, like I talked about, are with firms that don't even have active openings. So what I do is, if I look at enough firms for a candidate, I will find, without even having to ask, I'll find, based on the person's resume and how I present them, I'll find firms that have work in a specific practice area. So they will often bring in that person. And that's how I make most of my money in placements, is I just find firms where there's going to be it's a good business decision, because they have work, they have unarticulated job openings, so they haven't gone out in the market and posted jobs, and they have the work to bring in someone, and they hire them. So over 60%, I think it's even higher than that, are with firms that don't have openings. So law firms will create positions if they have the work and they see someone where they think they can make money off them. So they're not just looking at you like, oh, this person's got a good resume, I like their experience, like maybe I'll talk to them. They're just looking at you in a way to see if they can make money from you. And that's really the most important thing to understand. So you can apply to all these places that don't have openings but are in your practice area. They will look at you and they'll say, wait a minute, like, we can make money. So a partner will look at you and say, oh, I have all this work that's not getting done, or I can get additional work if I bring in this person. And that's just what they think. And so it's a business decision. It's the same thing. Investment bankers, some of them make tens of millions of dollars a year. All they're doing is trying to take a business and market it to another business that thinks they can make money off that business if they buy it at a low enough price. And it's how everyone thinks in the market. So if you're dependent on getting work from others, which most attorneys are, you're going to be dependent if you're a law student, you're going to be dependent if you're an associate. You're often going to be dependent if you're a partner, and hopefully you're not, but the law firm's just going to ask, do they have enough work? And if they have enough work, then they can offer they'll often bring you on. And if they don't have enough work, then this could be a risk that they're not willing to take. So you just need to identify firms that have enough work for someone like you. If you have a book of business, that's great. So the law firm will evaluate that to see if they can profit from you. And partners should have business. So when you get to the point of being a partner, you need to learn how to generate business. You should be doing this as an associate because that's the question people are always asking. And if they can't make money off you, then they won't hire you. So it's very sad that a lot of people get very senior and they get into a position where they don't have enough work to support themselves and they're dependent on others to give them work. And as you get more senior, this is just something to think about in the back of your mind. Your billing rate gets very close to what a partner is, and partners make more money when they have their own when they do their own work. So if a partner bills out $1,000 an hour, and they might get 50% of that, but if they give that work to someone that's making $800, that bills out at $800 an hour, a senior associate or something, then that partner might only get 15% of the work that you do. So the partners have to get hours. So they're incentivized to do as much work as they can and bill as many hours. And clients, if a client's paying $850 an hour as opposed to 1,000, they would prefer to have a partner doing it. So it's very, very difficult if you don't have business when you get senior to get jobs. You certainly can, and I place people like that all the time, but that those law firms have to have a lot of work. And law firms will often hire people that don't have enough work to keep them busy. And these sorts of hires are bad, and law firms make them all the time. But what happens is it starts creating financial strain. Maybe there's not enough work. Maybe they're paying you too much based on what they could be charging. Maybe that the partners don't have enough work, so they want to do all the work themselves. And so that can create financial strain and instability. And when that happens, the law firm will let you go. So people lose their jobs. You will lose your job in almost any law firm if the law firm feels like they're not making enough money off you. That's really the main criteria. So that's why layoffs happen in law firms. Law firms lay off associates and things all the time. When the market slows down, law firms let go of people that aren't billing enough hours when other people are billing hours because that particular person is not profitable enough or getting enough work from partners. So that's kind of what happens. Law firms often even will go out of business when they make bad business decisions. So there's law firms like the one I talked to you about, the Dewey Valentine, and all these big law firms can go out of business because what they did is they brought in partners and they guaranteed them large compensations. They might have said, oh, we're going to pay you $3 million a year for 5 years. And then all of a sudden, that person's only generating like $1 to $2 million, or not even that sometimes, that they guaranteed them compensation. The law firm can't afford to continue paying those people, but they're in contracts, so they continue paying them until they go out of business. And so sometimes law firms will hire partners that say they've got all this business that they're going to get and bring, and then they don't bring in the business, and then those people lose their jobs. So law firms are all making decisions based on if they can make money from you, and they can make very bad business decisions. Sometimes they make them hoping that there's additional work. Sometimes they make decisions that are just bad. And when partners go to firms and they don't have business, which is very common, they'll say, oh, I'm going to bring in this business, and they don't a lot of times, then the law firms have wasted, resources and salaries and things bringing people on that don't have the work. So you have to think about anytime you're interviewing with a firm, the law firm, you need to position yourself and think in the background, am I someone that the law firm can make money from? And it's all tied to the bottom line. So how do you do that? So you have to tell, people that people need to believe that you're a hard worker and that you will provide more value than they're paying. So an attorney that is going to come in and bill is very, very hungry and wants to make partner and so forth, may come in and bill, 2,500 hours a year, where someone that's not hungry and doesn't want to be partner and so forth will come in and may not do that. They want to hire someone that will bring in business. They want to bring in someone that they think can help them develop a different line of business, whether it's trust in the states or get more work from existing clients. So you have to be presenting yourself in a way and identifying firms that think they can make money off you. And you have to think in the background, you don't go into a law firm interview thinking about money or thinking about all these things. You need to think about how am I a good business decision from this for this firm? Because if you're not, the law firm is not going to keep you around. People that are bad business decisions are also people that have had problems at their past firms or don't get along with other people and that make work-life balance like a major priority and will only do certain types of work and not. So there's nothing wrong with you having those ideas, but this anytime a law firm thinks that there's any reason that you're not a bad business decisions, they won't hire you. I mean, most law firms, if they have openings, are going to receive applications. But if you appear someone that is more hardworking, that's more committed to your practice area, that is going to get along well with people and get work, then you're going to be more likely to hire than someone that's not like important to understand. So a lot of times people in interviews will signal that they may not leave if the compensation's not right. They may not stay if they can't work remotely or they want to work remotely a certain amount of time. That they will only do certain types of work. That they're not hungry enough, and people will signal that. So just thinking in the back of your mind, if you were a law firm and you were presented with two people, one that you think is going to bill 2,400 hours a year and the other that might bill 2,000, then the law firm is going to hire the person that comes across as someone that wants to work harder. Now, you may not want to work that hard, and that's okay. But you have to realize that you're competing against people that are going to come in and want you to put in a major effort and have major commitment to whatever you're doing. And if you don't, then the law firm isn't going to hire you. Law firms want to hire people that are like financial victories and so they can make money. And law firms, routinely pass up attorneys that could generate revenue. And business potential, if you're a partner, is not always the most important thing if they have the work. But a lot of times you'll be a bad business decision because there's just things that don't look good. So you could have been fired. There could be negative things in your background. You could have like bounced between firms too much. So if you're bouncing between firms a lot, then the law firm's going to say, hey, if we hire this person, they're probably going to leave. That's going to hurt us on our relationship with our clients. We're going to lose the ability to do this work and so forth. So law firms will often do that. Law firms will often, hire people that they get along with more. I mean, when someone's hiring someone, they're not just hiring you for your ability to do different types of work and to make money. They're also hiring you for how you make them feel. So most partners and most people in law firms want connection. You would too. So you want to be around people that you like, that you're comfortable with, and that make you feel good. And that has nothing to do with the type of work you're doing. It has to do with a business decision means, does this person make me feel good about myself? So are you going into interviews and connecting with people and making them feel good about themselves? So that's a business decision because you would want to spend time with people that make you feel good about yourself. So there's all sorts of things related to that. And if a law firm doesn't see you fitting in with other attorneys, even though they might have the work, then they're not going to be able to, they're not going to think that they can make money with you. So, cultural fit is extremely important. You have to be able to connect with people. They want people that are going to integrate with them and and be part of their existing team and make them feel good. And you would too. So are you connecting with people? I was interviewing a woman not too long ago, and she was a very skilled patent attorney. She'd gone to University of Michigan and studied electrical engineering, which is a very hard degree to get there. And then she'd gone to University of Michigan Law School, which is amazing because most engineers do not get good grades because there's like very hard curves and yeah, so they don't get the grades needed to get in the best law schools, but she did. So she got into Michigan Law School, and then she worked at two firms. One of them she sued, and which wasn't good, and then the other one I think fired her, which wasn't good. So I was talking to her, and I was trying to figure out like how can I present her as someone that people liked, and she was from kind of a working class background in Detroit. Her parents hadn't gone to college or law school or anything, and just kind of lived off welfare and just not from a good background. And so I said to her, you need to answer these questions. Like I was trying to get her to be like relatable and likable, which I do with all my candidates. And you personalize people. You talk about their hobbies and the different how they why they went to law school and their goals, and you personalize them. And so she wouldn't let me personalize her. She was just basically saying the only thing that matters is the fact that I'm admitted to the patent bar, that I can do this type of work. And she thought that was the only thing that matters was her ability to just do the work. And because of that, she was not getting, she was not doing well in interviews. People that go in and just say, I can do the work is not what law firms want. They want people that they feel comfortable with. And so she wasn't making people feel comfortable. And this, by the way, this ability to connect with people in interviews and so forth is extremely important. It's if you have a really good personality, like you can get hired by law firms where you might never otherwise get hired. Now I'm going to say some things that are offensive right now, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but I'm just going to come right out and say it because it's true. You will have men that are like 6'4" and very attractive. They stand a better chance often, even if their qualifications aren't as good, if they have a good personality of getting jobs than people that may not be like that, that don't have that personality, that aren't tall and things. Being tall as a man is very important. I just hate to say it. The same thing will happen with very attractive women. They will get jobs in firms where, you look at them and you're like, wait a minute, like this person didn't go to a great law school. They did do that well there, but here they are at one of these top firms. So people, and those types of people will often, they're not going to get just hired on their looks, but they're going to get hired if they can really, connect with people. That gives them a real benefit. I mean, that they have this kind of social skills, so they do very well, and they go into firms where they might not be able to do that. So I'm not saying you have to be super attractive. I'm not saying that men have to be tall and muscular or whatever and fit, but all this stuff are things that law firms consider. And why did they consider it? Well, first of all, if you have a really good personality and you can connect with people and you dress well and you're fit and things, that makes you look good to when you're talking to clients of the firm. So, and your ability to connect with clients is important because clients are also looking for relationships. Clients don't just hire people because they can do the work. I mean, some do, but most of them hire people because the partner has gone out and met with them and had dinner with them and talked to them about their family and checks in with them personally and has this relationship. I know attorneys, by the way. I know one associate. It's kind of interesting. He's got $2.5 million book of business, and he is an associate. He's like a sixth or seventh year, or maybe eighth year associate, and he's got this book of business, and it's not even in anything he does. It's like in something about like land use planning for people that are developing airports. I mean, it's just crazy. It's a very niche practice area. And he doesn't even do the work. He's got that work and he's at a firm that does the work for him. He gets a little bit of the money that is generating, but he's got all this work just because he surfed with these people in Nicaragua or something and went down to Nicaragua like quite often and would go down there and hang out with them. And that's what his business is. And most business that partners have is based on relationships. It's not just the work, it's the ability to connect with people. So if you have that as an associate, people are going to like that. And, people will reject people, that don't look like they're good business decisions. If you're interested in another practice area, for example, that's not a good business decision for a law firm because that person could then get interested in another one. And law firms, want people that are connecting and then also people that are in high margin practice areas. So what is a high margin practice area? That would be if a law firm has a lot of litigation, it's a high profit practice area. I mean, they want to put people in positions where they're going to make the most money. And so sometimes, law firms will make just bad judgment, like the person will be a bad business decision. So how do you find a firm interested in you? You present yourself as a good business decision, but also you have to knock on enough doors because you never know where someone has that work. You never know someone that may connect with you, like you interview with them and all of a sudden there's an amazing connection. And so, but if you apply to enough firms, if you're not working, if you're senior, if you have issues in your past, you just have to find law firms that where it looks like a good business is for them, where they can make money from you, where it looks like it's easy, and they have the work. And so that just means applying to enough firms. Law firms also make very bad business decisions when they hire people that they could make money off of or may bill the hours, but are disruptive. So what kind of person are you? Are you the kind of person that goes into a law firm and is positive and gets along with people and doesn't take part in drama or doesn't find things wrong with the firm? So there are people, and you may be one of them, and it's okay. You have to learn how to be not be part of that, but there are people that go into law firms, aren't sure they want to be there, find fault with the firm, complain, go into different associates, and they get together and they share their negative opinions about the law firm. They may be people that look like they're causing issues or always going to HR and things. And so people won't hire people like that. If they think you have personality issues or something and you're not part of the team, then law firms won't like that. And that's one reason why they hire often based on relationships. And so some, law firms, people just have lots of attorneys will just not fit with a culture, or they will have problems with places wherever they go, and they maybe won't work hard enough, and they will go in and make mistakes and not dedicate themselves. And so those are bad business decisions. So that's kind of the big thing. The law firms are asking whether they can make money off you. So you would too. So that's what I do when I hire. I want to hire people that I think can make money off of, and I want to hire people that I get along with and connect with personally. If I don't have that, then that's just a bad hire, because if there's no connection, that doesn't make me feel comfortable working with a person, and the person doesn't have a relationship that will make them hopefully stay and feel comfortable. The next thing that law firms are asking, and this is very, very important, if you do this, you will get more jobs, and if you have this mindset, you will have a better career. So what does this next one mean? It means the law firms are always asking when they hire you, they're asking if you can do the work, of course, but they're also asking whether or not you're going to stay. So, are you someone that's going to go through issues there, will stick around, and is not constantly going to be looking for a new job or not commit? If you're not committed, then why is that bad? So you think you can go one place and bounce around stuff, which it can benefit you. But if you don't look committed when a law firm's hiring you, then that's not good, because what does lack of commitment mean to stay there? That means that you may check out, and when you check out, you're not going to be, or looking for a job, you're not going to be working as many hours. If you check out, you're not going to, do as good a work. If you check out and you leave, then the law firm will need to hire someone else, and work won't get done when you leave. So that's not good. The partners will have to do the work, whatever. So people want to hire people that look like they're going to stick around. Law firms want to hire associates that look like they could be partners and stick around, that will commit. They want to work in a law firm, not in-house, that are committed. The law firm will hire partners that look like they're going to generate business and more business. And law firms will hire people that they think are going to be stable, loyal, and profitable. And I hate to say this, but you have to look like you'll kind of accept whatever that law firm gives you. If they don't give you a bonus one year, you have to look like someone that will still be committed. If the law firm, whatever, you have to look like someone that will go through issues and be committed over time. I hire recruiters all the time, and I put them in offices when they want to work in an office. And that's a big commitment. I have to pay for office space. If the person doesn't stick around, then I'm going to lose the money that I invested in paying for offices. If the person, I mean, there's all these different things that I'm looking at, like, will the person stick around? And it's very interesting, because there are people that you hire that will stick around and go through ups and downs, and there's people that law firms and businesses hire that won't. So, for example, this is just a quick example I want to give you. When I started BCG, my first two hires, one was a woman that had been at her last employer for 16 years. The other was one that had been there for 8. And they were both hired. And then I started hiring all these recruiters. And most of the time I would hire people that had worked in top law firms that, for whatever reason, were my candidates and weren't working. And I would talk to them about recruiting, and they had been there maybe 1 or 2 years with their last firms. And all of those people came in, all of them ended up making problems. All of them ended up leaving. All of them, got on the side and tried to, be part of like negativity and that sort of thing, and just weren't good hires. And because of that, that was not good. But the people that have been the last firm for 8 years and the person been there 16 years stayed similar amounts of time in our company. So there are people that come into firms, come into organizations, commit, make the most of it, and just put their head down and don't get involved in drama and aren't always looking for jobs. And so these are the kind of people that law firms want to hire. So if you are bouncing around a lot, you're going to have very good explanations for that, meaning I'm trying to work on more of my work, what I do. The law firm didn't have work. I'm trying to find work, but you have to look like someone where there's not going to be issues with you and you're likely to stay because this is what you would want if you're an employer. So you always have to think about like, what would I want if I was hiring someone? If you were hiring a nanny to take care of your kids, and that nanny had been worked in a new job every 6 months, if that nanny quit, like that wouldn't be good. So if you saw someone that had been in their previous jobs for as a nanny for 6 months or a year or whatever, and they had like 7 or 8 of those or 4 of them on their resume, like that, you wouldn't like that because you would think, okay, well, this person will start taking care of my kids. They're going to have a relationship with my kids. And then I'm going to rely on them because they're taking care of my kids when I'm working and so forth. And if they leave, it's going to create all sorts of problems. So this is how law firms are looking at things. They're looking at things like, is this person going to be a good hire? Are they going to stick around? And is this a good business decision? So you need to always look at things like that. And so if you don't look like someone that's going to stick around, then you're a risk for the law firm. And so short-term commitment is not good. So you have to look like someone that's going to stay there and generate money for them over time. And if you've gone in-house, that's not a good business decision for a law firm because you've shown that you're interested in another practice area. And so another practice setting, and you're not committed to working in a law firm. So the law firm will believe if you come work for them, then you're not going to stick around. So that becomes very, very difficult for for people to get positions when they're coming from in-house, for example, because law firms will compare them to people that are in law firms. If you take a long career break and you're interested in something else, or you go and you do something, something completely removed from the practice of law, that's a business decision, bad business decision, because the law firms think you're going to do that again. And so you're going to have a hard time getting a job unless you can convince people that now you really want to work in a law firm, you learn that you want to have a career in a law firm, all these sorts of things that the law firm wants to see. If you had a lot of short-term jobs, I'm just telling you, it's not a good idea. You have to try to have some stability on your resume. If you're at a place for 5 or 6 years, that's great. If you're placed your first firm for 3 years, that's great. But if you have a lot of moves on your resume, that's not good. If you're trying to change practice areas, like, that's very difficult because are you going to be committed to the new practice area? And so all these things are about retention risk. If you have a lot of history of business, like if you're a partner and you've done that for the past 3 years and the amount of business that you're generating is continually increasing, that's a good business decision. That's what investment banks do, by the way. They'll say this business generated this amount of money last year, they generated this amount of money the next year, it's growing and makes it a good business decision. So stable, proven performers that are likely to stay, all this sort of stuff. If you've been at your firm for several years compared to someone that hasn't, you're a better hire. Oftentimes law firms will like people that it's much easier to get jobs if you're relocating, somewhere where you're from. If you're from, like, say you're from, I don't know, Dayton, Ohio, and you're working in Minneapolis and you want to go home, well, law firms will think, well, this person is likely to be stable if they come back there because this is where they're from and they want to remain there, and all sorts of things because they want to see someone that has long-term stability and is likely to stay there. Now, you may not have long-term stability. So how do you market that? I'll just kind of tell you real quickly. You have to market it as you're trying to find the right firm that's really good in your practice area. This law firm offers that. You're trying to move to better firms, or maybe you just have bad luck going places that don't have a lot of work. I mean, you can do that all sorts of different ways, but ultimately, law firms need to believe that you're going to stick around. That's a better business decision for them. If you're applying to markets where you don't have any contacts and stuff, that can be risky, because there's a high likelihood that you'll leave. So I remember when I was a law clerk, I was applying to firms. By mistake, I started applying to firms outside of Los Angeles. Like I thought I was whatever. I just did research of firms that I could apply to, and I applied to firms in Bakersfield and Fresno, California, which are not exactly like the best places to live in the country or in California. And those law firms that saw my resume just called up and were like, why would you want to work in Fresno or Bakersfield? And I had no reason for that. Whereas firms in Los Angeles just figure, why would anybody want to work in Los Angeles? And so they basically called up and they said, do you have any ties here, any connection? And I said, no. And they said, well, if you come here, you're not going to like it and you're going to leave. So that would have been a bad business decision. So if you're trying to apply to large markets, law firms are going to be less suspicious of you. And smaller markets, if you have ties or something, that's going to help you. And so, I'm kind of pushing this, telling you a lot of stuff and maybe more information than you need about this particular point. But law firms just want people that are going to stay. They want you to see you're committed to working in your practice area. They want to see people that are unlikely to leave. Like, this is the firm you've been looking for. They want to see people that will not have personality problems and things like that. They want to see people that are going to stick around. If they don't, if they hire people that aren't, which law firms do all the time, if you've been at several firms and you keep moving, that means that the law firm has essentially not made the best business decision hiring you. And so you have to target, if you do look like a bad business decision, you have to find firms that are going to overlook it. You have to find firms where maybe your qualifications are so good they can't find people like that in the market, but you just need to really make sure that you do your best to position yourself as someone where the firms are making good business decisions. It's very common, extremely common. So people go to Yale Law School, and that law school presents law firms. People think about law firms in a way that's not always positive. It's more negative than positive. And so they will often go into public service and different things with the government, right out of law school, and then they will decide at some point, hey, I want to go work in a law firm, and law firms will hire them often, but they will leave and they'll just be like, hey, this person went to Yale, and they'll overlook the fact that the person didn't choose that practice setting out of law school, or maybe they were in a law firm and then left to do something else, and they're just horrible hires. So there are people that aren't committed to working in law firms, but they like the fact that they went to Yale. So law firms can be blinded by that, especially early in your career, like law school, clerkships, experience at elite law firms. And they hire people based on that, but these are not necessarily indicators that you're going to stick around. And so a lot of times people with these backgrounds will go through working at all these different firms and just won't have that kind of commitment. And firms will often ignore those red flags and make hiring decisions based on past procedures rather than the fact that they're likely to stay. So these are mistakes that people make, and you can find law firms if you've had problems in the past by applying to enough firms. And often the way you present yourself in your resume is often very helpful. Sometimes attorneys will be like 12 or 13 years out of law school and may have worked at like 7 or 8 firms. They should not list 7 or 8 firms in a consensual or whatever, 6 firms. They shouldn't list all of those firms as individual places where they applied. Instead, what they should be doing is having one line saying I was an associate of top firms, including naming a few between these dates of 10 years. I mean, that makes people look a lot better. But, past achievements do not mean you're going to be reliable, and firms will often overlook that. But you have to convince people that you're likely to stay. And the other thing, a good way to convince people of that too, that you should always be thinking about in your resume, that whatever the firm you're applying to and trying to go to work at, or where you've worked in the past, is more due that the law firms are going to be interested in you if you look like someone that where your whole career or everything you've done has led to you wanting to be in this firm, and you think that that's the absolute best fit for you. So that just means you've been going to firms and maybe getting better and better experience in your practice area, and then this law firm offers you the best platform for your practice area, and that all sorts of things. But if your movements don't connote, and the next firm doesn't connote some sort of evolution to wanting to work in this firm, and it could be you're at like 3 major law firms and now you're going to mid-sized firm, and you want to go to mid-sized firm because you can attract clients there, or you can have more responsibility, whatever. You have to look like someone that's going to fit. So law firms, business models, law firms are always looking at you like, will you strengthen their business? And does that help them? And if you don't, then you're not going to get hired. Now, different law firms want people with different types of pedigree, preferably working at similar firms and all that sort of thing. And these can help the law firms maintain the quality of service they provide. And so your odds of getting hired if you don't have that stuff are often, not as good. There's all sorts of rules, like I talked to you about the 5 or 6 attorneys, most marketable 8 to 10 makes it harder. And so, often, the thing that the law firms are looking for is, the highest level of performance. I told you about law firms of business. I told you about, just the fact that law firms will often make bad business decisions. Sometimes they'll hire people that are related to a client. Sometimes they'll hire people because they're desperate to fill gaps quickly. So it's kind of interesting when the corporate market, like there's been periods of history that I've been involved in where corporate is just completely out of control. Like there's like so much need and stuff that the firms will hire anyone. And so they've hired people, major law firms, went to Pace Law School, didn't do that well and that sort of thing. So they make those decisions. But some law firms will, hire even, people, that just aren't good people and will make those decisions. So some law firms will, deviate from their business model, which, they'll hire people without business, or they'll lower their hiring standards, and then these are opportunities often. So you can often identify firms where you can get hired where you normally wouldn't. So I have people that are senior business, like corporate attorneys with like 30 years of experience that are unemployed. And if I find and send them to enough places, I can get them interviews and often hired. So, the more you position yourself as someone that can help that firm in their unique business model, that can help. One of the best ways to get jobs, if you want to work in a really good firm, often is to find firms that are new or growing, and they will hire people outside of the way that top law firms will do, and they often will have top law school graduates, and you can apply early in their growth, and this can really, will help you. And these firms will be often flexible. So, for example, when I started at Quinn Emanuel, which is now over 1,000 attorneys, the firm had like 45 attorneys in it. And essentially, if you worked really hard for like 7 years or 8 years, you could make partner there. Whereas in other firms, you would have to have business and things. So that happened very early. And then as the law firm grew, they put in all these standards that people needed to have business and so forth. But people that got in there early and got hired, but had this opportunity. So there's lots of law firms like that. So finding emerging firms can be important. And if you target enough of those, you can often get hired, sometimes even if your qualifications aren't as good. But the longer a law firm's been around, I just want you to understand this, the harder it's going to be for you to get a job with them, because they'll have all these standards of the type of people they hire. They won't deviate from their business model. And they will often, these firms are less likely to make exceptions. And so it becomes actually, for the better the firm, the more difficult it often is to get a position there. So, it's just something to understand. So your ability to get a job, especially if you're not like a perfect candidate, is going to be much harder at a major law firm, than if you don't. So another thing that's important is sometimes when you apply to different sized markets, you're much more likely to get a job than you would in major markets. So if you went to Harvard Law School, for example, and you're in New York City, there's a lot of people like you. I mean, Harvard Law School is huge. I don't know how many people, 600 people or 580 or something in their class. And so there's a lot of people from Harvard Law School in New York. And so if you are trying to get a job there, it's going to be much harder for you often than if you take your Harvard Law degree and start applying to firms in smaller markets. You're just going to look like an awesome person. That's going to help them in terms of their website having you on there. It's going to help you in all sorts of different ways. It's going to make you very unique, and you're more likely to get hired. So often applying to smaller markets is a very good business decision. Also, if the law firm doesn't have people like you, so if you're like, again, if you're a Harvard Law graduate and you're applying to firms middle, Midwestern city that's not that large, you're much more likely to be able to get a job, because law firms just don't see people like you. Same thing with a niche practice area. Like I have people all the time that might be like an ERISA attorney, which is a retirement benefits attorney. maybe in, Chicago, and then they want to look for a position, and they can look in all these different markets and get interviews. I had a candidate recently, it was just this week. He was a real estate tax attorney, and he was like, 15 years out. He only had 2 years of experience in a law firms, and he'd been at one law firm for a year, and now he's at another law firm. He's been there for a year. So he's only worked at two law firms in 15 years. I got him an interview at a law firm that was small, like 6 people in San Diego, that does nothing but real estate tax, because there's just not a lot of people out there that do real estate tax, federal real estate tax. And so that law firm's interviewing, which is like something that is almost like next to impossible if he didn't have this niche practice area. So he's not from California, so he'd have to take the bar. He's never been to San Diego. I don't even know if the guy's ever spent any time in California, but because he's so rare, that law firm looked at him and they're like, wow, we don't find a lot of people like that. He worked in real estate tax and accounting firm, but same thing, different types of economic periods. There's just not a lot of people in the market. Trademark attorneys when the market's hot, securities attorneys sometimes. So law firms will look at them and they'll be like, it'd be very difficult for us to find someone else. And the rarer you are, the better your chance of getting hired. I had a guy once that was had been a partner at a decent sized law firm in Chicago. And he had quit that job and went and started a diaper company in Russia and had done that for like 5 or 6 years. And then I don't know that his business went out of business because Procter and Gamble came in with Huggies and all these sorts of things. He could no longer compete. But he then wanted to work in a law firm as a securities attorney again. And I found a good sized law firm in Seattle that hired him as a partner, and because they just couldn't find people like that. So the rarer you are, the better your chances of getting hired. So you have to look at a lot of markets often, like often smaller markets where there's not a lot of people like you, or where there's just a dearth of attorneys. I mean, there are markets like Wyoming. I mean, I'm not suggesting you work there, but like Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, smaller cities and things in Colorado, all these smaller markets where there's just not a lot of people for them to hire. I had a guy not too long ago. He was just didn't go to a good law school. He was working in this small law firm in rural Ohio, and just there wasn't anything really that special about his background. And he got hired through me at another small law firm in that market because there just wasn't a lot of people that like them out there, even though you didn't have a good resume. So, smaller markets can help you. Different markets will view your credentials differently. You could be an expert in one market, not marketable in a large market, but marketable in a smaller one. You could be marketable in a large market if there's not a lot of people like you. So sometimes, there's just a demand in the market for people like you in larger markets and not enough people. So applying to lots of different markets is something that you should be doing. And again, if you're an example would be like if you're in I don't know what a good market to talk to you about would be. I don't know, you're in Denver and you want a job, and lots of people want to work in Denver. You want a job in Denver, and then you're looking for a job, but if you start applying to jobs in Salt Lake City, jobs in Phoenix and things, each time you do that, you're increasing your odds of getting a position by 100%. So why wouldn't you apply to a lot of different markets? It's extremely effective. And law firms in different markets won't know how to market their jobs. They won't post jobs on their website. They won't do advertising. They'll rely on referrals and things, and then that just have a limited reach. So if you apply to them, then they don't even know how to find attorneys often. If you apply to them, even if they don't have an active opening, then you can get a job. And again, I just keep talking about this because it's so important, but this is how I get probably, in excess of, I mean, 85% of attorneys' jobs is when I help them apply to markets and things where there's no openings because there's just not a lot enough people like them. So what are you doing? Like anytime you think you can't get a job, you're just out of your mind, because in most states, there's hundreds of cities that hire attorneys, and there's just that in your own state, there's always plenty of places you can find. And then if you want, you can work in other states. I mean, there are, in terms of law firms of more than like 5 or 6 people, BCG has found over 100,000 of them, but we certainly haven't found all of them. the solo practitioners and even smaller firms, or middle market firms that don't have it. I mean, there's all these different places you can possibly work. If you have an LLM, you don't apply to firms in New York City. And you're from a foreign country, you apply to firms in smaller markets. People ask questions all the time about trying to work as a staff attorney or contract attorney and all these things, which is absolutely insane. Like, you don't need to ever work in a job that's not full time. There are also all these practice areas where you can get hired if you're not able to get jobs. Like, the practice areas would be personal injury or insurance defense or all these different things, trust in estates, immigration. There's always people that will hire you, and if you get hired, I mean, it's easy. So law firms in major markets, if you're trying to get a job there, you're not going to be as rare. Like, those law firms in major markets will always be able to find people most of the time. They have large applicant pools, and so it's very easy for them to find people. Like, a lot of times people will think, oh, I should apply to jobs in Washington, D.C., because it's very easy for me to wave into the bar there. And so all these people all over the country are always trying to apply to firms in Washington, D.C. And that's not smart, because I mean, there's more attorneys per capita in Washington, D.C., like by far, than any area of the country. So if you're in, I don't know, if you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you're trying to get a job in Washington, D.C., that's not probably a very smart move, because I mean, it's going to be much harder for you regardless of your qualifications, often because there's just so many people like you. If you're trying to only apply to brand name firms, those firms are getting lots and lots of candidates, so people will often just run their search that way instead of finding other firms that have maybe much easier to get jobs. And if you're applying to firms that don't have openings, again, you're the only applicant, so the law firm thinks they can't find people like you. And so when everyone's trying to get these jobs with firms that are posting jobs and advertising their jobs, everyone's trying to get jobs with the big firms. And really, the best way to get a job is to target firms that aren't going to be able to find people you. A quick example is, and I kind of like this example. I think it's interesting just because it just shows you the power of marketing, under marketing things. So in high school, I started a asphalt business where I was doing this asphalt maintenance, which I was spraying tar onto parking lots and driveways and sealing cracks with hot tar, doing asphalt patching and all this stuff. And I was in Michigan, and Michigan has these winters and these summers that are hot. And so asphalt is always getting beat up and things, and then needs to be repaired. You can make the driveways and parking lots look very nice. So each summer, I would have to buy trucks, and I would have to buy a new one every summer, or new trucks, because what happened is I would be spraying this asphalt sealer, and all of this dust or all this tar that I was spraying would be caught by the wind and be cover the trucks and destroy them. And then I would get the tar myself and sit in the seats, and that would destroy the seats. And I would be putting tar and all this stuff in the back of the trucks, and then towing things and just to destroy these trucks. And so I would have to find them. And there were kind of three different places, or four actually, where I could find them. There was the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News, which each had classified ads where people would post vehicles for sale. There was another one called The Recycler. There was another one called, I think, Auto Trader. But the Recycler, Detroit Free Press, and that, Auto Trader and everything were widely distributed, and they were expensive to advertise, but you could go in any 7-Eleven or wherever, any grocery store, and find these. And so people would put ads in there, and they'd advertise a 15-year-old truck from maybe 2000 or 2500. Today, that would probably be $6,000 or $7,000. And these people would get calls and on these trucks, and they would show them, and they would feel confident they were going to sell them at that price. So I could drive, if I drove like 30 minutes outside of the Detroit suburbs into like places that weren't really considered part of the suburbs, which might be like St. Clair Shores, or it doesn't matter, Mount Clemens. There would always be small little papers that would advertise things locally. And when those places, and often they would allow even free advertising. When those places that were advertising in these little cities locally, I would find these publications, and then I would, look for trucks. And these publications had, very little advertising in them. If they did have advertising, not many people were seeing them. And these people would advertise in these things, thinking it's smart for them to just save money instead of spending, the equivalent of, $300 to $500 now advertising in one of these major publications. They would maybe pay $10 for something. And I would contact these people with these trucks and things for sale. And when I contact them, they might have been hadn't received any calls for weeks. And so, instead of having to pay $2,000 to $2,500 for a good truck that would work and get me through the summer, I could often pay like 400. These sellers didn't know how to advertise to get the highest price. Then because they didn't do that, they didn't get a lot of interest. And so instead of looking at the large market, I looked at the small market. And even though I knew that those trucks were worth more, the people didn't. And so I would buy these trucks very, very cheaply. And the whole lesson here is that because this stuff wasn't widely advertised and people didn't know about their trucks for sale, people didn't think they were worth as much, and so they would sell them. And so it's the same thing with you. If you apply to firms that aren't getting a lot of applications, that may not know how to promote jobs, that even don't have openings, they're more likely to hire you because there's just not a lot of people like you applying. And so this is something, that could change the course of your career if you understand how to find these types of firms. And you can find firms where, there's just tons and tons of opportunity, and we're that. So I say, instead of spending 10,000 on trucks every summer, I might spend, 1,500 or 2,000 or something, which is smart. So years ago, it was interesting to me. I was using an investment bank to sell one of my companies, and got very close to selling it to a venture capitalist firm. And I was out for dinner with one of the people that was going to buy the company, and he made a remark that convinced me not to sell it. And to me, he said this deal with him was a no-brainer. He'd had a couple of drinks because it wasn't going to cost he and his private equity firm anything to purchase my company. And when I asked what he meant, he said, well, interest rates are low, so we can get a loan against your future cash flow, and then we can use your cash flow to pay off the loan, and then below own the company. And I was like, this is crazy. So essentially what the private equity firm was saying is they were saying that they could get a loan for a low interest rate, they could give me the money, and then they would pay off the loan with the cash flow and then own the company. And so what they were doing is they were just using their contacts to be able to buy a company essentially for them for nothing. And I thought that was incredible. And this is, when you look at and you hear about private equity people and investment bankers making all this money, that's essentially what they're doing is they're exploiting the buyers that just can't get a loan against their future cash flow and giving them a chunk of money, but that doesn't cost them anything. So I realized it was insane. I don't know that I could have gotten a loan like that, but if I wanted to get a big lump sum of money, I probably could have gotten a loan against future cash flow and then not had to sell my business, which I didn't. So I almost literally, because I didn't have any information about what I was worth or what the company was worth, I realized that knowledge gaps can be exploited by others. So all these people, Warren Buffett, whoever's buying a company, and you think that these people are billionaires, I mean, essentially they're just using leverage and loans and things often to make all this money. I mean, it's a great job if you can get it. And so it was a, pivotal decision for me. So again, lack of knowledge in the market, applying to smaller markets, understanding that there's knowledge gaps and things, people may think that you're more valuable than you really are, and so you're able to exploit business decisions. And so, any law firm, just so you understand the kind of the crux of what I'm talking about, that everybody's hiring you because it's the right business decision. Law firms will hire you if you look like they can make money off you, and so you need to understand, how do you look. Like, do you look like someone that can make the firm money? Do you look like someone that they can't find or they think is very rare in the market? Do you look like someone that's going to stick around and make money for them over the long term? And are they comfortable with you as someone that can make them money and you're getting along with them? And, and you can get often hired at a much better law firm than you belong at. And that by a bad business decision, that can help you. You can get hired by law firms that will pay you more than the market demands, and they make bad business decisions. But when a law firm, does make bad business decisions, and you will, if you apply to enough places, like, and you apply to enough firms, you will find firms that will hire you and that will make bad business decisions. But if a law firm makes a bad business decision, it's probably going to eventually catch up with them, and they will probably, let you go, so you won't stay there very long. So it's also from your perspective, like, are you making a good business decision going someplace? So you're making a good business decision going someplace if you look like you're indispensable to the firm, that the firm's going to pay you very well, if you're going to get long-term work, if you're going to be able to potentially make partner there, and if you're all these sorts of things. So you're making business decisions too. And the biggest business decision, just so you understand kind of how the profession works, the biggest business decision is if you become a partner and you want to work in a law firm, is that law firm going to support you in terms of giving you associates and partners to work with, in terms of giving you a brand? Is that the best business decision for you and your clients? Are you going to make more money at this firm than you would at another firm? So those are the kind of business decisions that people are making, kind of all the partners are making, and and that with their business. I made a business decision. So when I was a fourth year attorney, I had what now would be probably like a seven or $800,000 book of business. I was doing work for, and it wouldn't have been a stable one, but I was working for all these companies in Silicon Valley that were starting businesses and doing just basically contracts and things for them, and that was my business. And that would not have lasted. But I was at a law firm making, $220,000 a year or something like that. And I was like, why wouldn't I just take all this business and do it myself? I can make, four times as much money. That's a good business decision. So I decided to do that. And when I quit, they told me that you can't quit. If you quit, you're not going to be able to get a job in another big law firm. So why don't you go talk to recruiters? I talked to recruiters, and I was like, I decided, like, I understood what they were doing. I think they were good at it, they improved at it. And I decided that working as a recruiter would be a better business decision for me than working as an attorney. So everybody's making business decisions. You should be making business decisions with your career. You can start your own practice. You can do all these things if you're making a good business decision. Also, business decisions are about, like, what practice area are you in. So if you get training in family law, like, that could be an extremely good business decision, because you can do that your whole career. If you go to a firm and learn how to do family law, and you can start your own practice very, very easy. If you have a trust in estates, same thing. If you do the personal injury, like, same thing. Like, so often the business decisions you make are related to your practice area. There are attorneys all the time that are like, eighth year attorney at Skadden, like, decides, hey, I'm making $600,000 a year, whatever it is right now, but I could start my own practice doing family law. And if I do that, like, I'm going to be able to have work, like, for the rest of my career. I'm not going to have to work these crazy hours. I'm going to, be able to be independent and have my own business. And people do that. People will leave major firms with that. You'll see corporate attorneys will do that, and they'll go into trust and estates and all these consumer facing practice areas. People will make business decisions right out of law school. I can't get a job in a big firm. If I get the jobs I'm getting, I don't like. So I'm going to start my own practice doing something. So people make business decisions all the time. And as an attorney, you should be making business decisions about what you're going to do with your career, where you're going to take your experience. You can work often in smaller markets and do incredibly well. Like, you can, there are markets where there's no attorneys. Like, there might be just very few attorneys working there, and you can take yourself there and make a lot of money. I remember when I was in law school, I was in a bar, and I was talking to these two attorneys that had gone to Thomas Cooley Law School, which isn't a great law school. I mean, it's not even called that anymore, but at the time it was considered, one of the worst law schools in the country. And I was talking to these guys, and they were very well dressed, very confident. And they said, the smartest thing you could do is to go to a small market and put up a billboard on the highway saying you're a personal injury attorney. I thought that was kind of funny at the time, but actually that was really good advice, because people that do that can do extremely well. It's a good business decision. So all these things that you need to do to get a job, you have to help. You have to look like a good business and law firm. You also have to make business decisions with your career. Those business decisions are you going to go to a law firm that's going to give you the best training? Are you going to are you going to get good experience? I talk to people all the time. I'm working with a woman right now that's a family law attorney, and she's got 1 year of experience, and she quit her last job because she said the environment was toxic or something and just quit, and which isn't good. And she's been unemployed for like 3 or 4 months, and I got her a job. She got hired by a firm that I got her an interview with, and she hasn't taken the job yet. And she's coming back and she's asking if she can work remotely like 4 days a week. She's asking if she can get a starting bonus. She's asking if she can work only certain number of hours and all these different things. And I was like, this is crazy because like you only have 1 year of experience. And if you like this practice area, you need to go someplace where you're going to get a lot of training for 5 years. And then you can, once you get this training, you can start your own practice or whatever. So yeah, it's a good business decision when you're a young attorney to go someplace that's going to train you in a practice area. You should not be that concerned about compensation. You should be concerned about like what is a good business decision for me. And that business decision doesn't need to be working at the law firm that pays the most money or in the biggest market. You think you're really cool and you want to work in New York City. It's in a place that's going to give you long-term career stability. I see people all the time. There are certain markets. I love these markets, like Grand Rapids, Michigan, or where else? Like upstate New York, or just all these different markets that aren't huge markets, but you go to work in those markets, your hours are better, your odds, your ability to make partner is much easier, your lifestyle's better, your ability to generate clients is better. So, every place you go, you need to make a business decision. So I'll just tell you one business decision that I made. So I was at this law firm, Quinn Emanuel, when I started. They had so much work, like just an incredible amount of work that if you worked enough hours, you could make partner. That was pretty much how it worked. I mean, they had to like you and everything. If you worked enough hours, you could become a partner. I was like there and I was like, this is insane. Like, I have to sit here and work 8 years, like billing all these hours. I'll never be able to get clients. As a matter of fact, they don't want me to get clients. And so I'll never have control over my career. And I'll be kind of in this is not a good situation for me. And so I left that firm, even though it was awesome, to go to this other firm, Dewey Valentine, where I knew I would be able to. I felt I could bring in clients there, and I was right. I mean, within a year, I had $700,000 in business, and so that was a good business decision. I couldn't have done contracts and all these things that the Quinn because it was a litigation firm. So I decided to move to another firm where I felt like I could take control of my career. So you need to make those kind of decisions as well. So, everything you do in your career should be a business decision. If you're getting hired, you have to realize that law firms are looking at you as a business decision. If you're marketing yourself to different types of firms in different markets, you're putting yourself in a situation where the law firm's making a business decision and you're more likely or less likely to get a job. So I hope this stuff has helped. I mean, this is a lot of information, but most people do not think of their careers as business decisions. Most people do not realize that when you're looking for a job, everything is about the law firm making a business decision with you. And if you don't look like the best business decision, then you won't get hired. If you are marketing yourself to enough firms, which I can talk about in the questions how to do that, then you're gonna be far more likely to get a job. And if you go into a firm where you're a very good business decision for them, you're also more likely to have career stability. So we'll take a quick break just for like a minute or two, and then when I come back, we'll do questions. I would encourage everyone to, if you have any questions right now, just about your career, anything in general, to ask as many questions as possible because this is just a good opportunity to learn about this stuff. And yeah, so any questions? And again, I'll stay as long as people want to answer questions. I'll be back in just one moment. Thanks. All right. Question. Give me 1 second here. Get to Q&A. All right. Second question. All right. Questions. Q&A. And I always think that the Q&A is like one of the most important parts because even if the questions aren't related to this webinar, you can, I can answer things that will help you, things that you may have been thinking, doing in your career that could be mistakes and so forth. And it's can be very smart to ask a lot of questions. Let me just hear some answers. Okay, questions. Let's see here. Okay, questions and answers. Okay, based on the current economy, any recommendations whether to switch jobs from local government to private practice or an in-house role? I previously worked in a law firm. After many years of practicing government litigation, I'm thinking about leaving government practice again to earn more money. It's been about 9 months since I returned to government. Okay, so there's a bunch of different ways that the mistakes that people make when they're thinking about their careers. So the first thing is law firms offer something that no other employment setting can offer. If you go to work in a law firm and you learn a practice area and you become someone that can generate business, or you just find a firm that's willing to pay you even without business for a long period of time. I mean, you can practice in a law firm until you're in your 70s or even 80s, and you can do all sorts of things. You can bring in clients and make money from them and have career stability. You can do your skills will typically increase because you have to work for clients that are going to pay money for your services. I mean, there's all these things that you can do in a law firm. You can build a book of business. You can start your own law firm. You can do all these things that enable you to practice for a very long period of time. What I'm seeing now is, I mean, there are just so many attorneys in Washington and all over the country that are in the government are losing their jobs. And it's very, very difficult for them to find other jobs in law firm. Why would a law firm hire them? Because their experience often is not something that their clients are paying for. They know that the person has left that practice setting. So if they've left the practice setting of a law firm, why would a law firm take a risk that the person's going to leave again? They were unhappy or whatever, and their experience doesn't. So if you try to work in local government or anything or in-house, those are just dangerous jobs. Working in the government's dangerous because you can lose your job. Working in-house is dangerous. Most resumes I see of attorneys that will go, so you may be thinking like, hey, I could go in-house and I'm at this big law firm. I mean, most people, or any law firm, most people that go in-house, I mean, it's not always the case, of course, but most people that go in-house, they don't keep their jobs in an in-house environment. Companies go out of business, they downsize, they merge. But that's very common. Other companies will hire a new GC or a general counsel, will hire a new CEO, and then those people will bring in their own legal departments. The what you do in-house is much different than working in a law firm. In-house attorneys, typically their job is to help the CEO so the company can make more money, bend rules and do all sorts of things, which a lot of times law firm attorneys aren't comfortable with. So then they lose their jobs there. So there's just all these dangers. So should you return to a law firm? I would. I mean, if you feel like you can get a job in a law firm, which anyone can, I mean, you just have to apply to enough places, then you're going to have a much better long-term career than if you try to work in the government or in-house. Those are just risky jobs. And I don't know what your position is, but if I was an attorney and I wanted to be in a position where I could buy a house, and if I did buy a house where I could be confident I'd be able to pay my mortgage for a long period of time, and that sort of thing, I think I would be very, very cautious about going in-house for the government, because how are you going to do that? What if you have a family to support? What if two of you are supporting a family or supporting a household? Like, how are you going to do that? So you need to understand like what works for me, the most. Like, how am I most likely to, what is the best career decision for me? And I think, just in my experience, the best career decision is definitely to work in a law firm. I think I mean, I don't think there's any other practice setting where the benefits are so high. I mean, it's just, and the other thing too is people don't realize it's much different when you're a partner, or or in a law firm or something like that, than someone just doing the work. If you're just doing the work, like, fine, then whoever's giving you the work inside of the law firm is your client. But once you become an attorney and you have your own work and your own business, like, that's actually much more exciting, because you're making all these strategic decisions. You're deciding what to do. You're running a business. You're getting money based on how much your clients are billing. All these exciting things. You can bring in more work and get referrals. And it's great. I mean, there's just so many amazing things that you can do in a law firm compared to working in-house or whatever. I mean, you can have a much better career. Well, why wouldn't you do that? And you can get good in-house jobs and good government jobs that offer stability. I'm not saying that's not the case. Sometimes people really like the hours of working in the government. Sometimes people feel like there's more employment security in the government. Sometimes people go to really good in-house jobs and have stability and are able to stay there for a long period of time. But it's just that's sort of the exception for most in-house jobs. And for government jobs, if you find a really good job in the local government or private practice or something, then that can be a very good job. But in most cases, It's very, very difficult. And it's very interesting too, by the way, for local government and government types of jobs. Every city in the country like has a website like where they list their jobs, and there's almost always government jobs on almost every website. So if you take the top 250 cities in the country and you look at New York and then you look at Chicago, but then you go down and you start looking at Memphis and things, all of those cities have job boards that are for the city. And most of those cities, a lot of them have legal jobs on them. So there is a lot of opportunity in government, but at the same time, those positions are never going to pay as much. You're never going to have the kind of employment stability you would have if you had your own clients, and working for clients that are paying you and you're making money from. I think it's much more exciting than just doing the work, but that's my opinion. Okay, why do some law firms pass on highly qualified candidates, and how can I be one of them? There's all sorts of reasons they pass on highly qualified candidates. They pass on highly qualified candidates because that person may not have enough employment. They may look like someone that's going to bounce around. They may pass on you because you don't have the requisite experience. They may pass on you because better candidates are coming along. There's all sorts of reasons that law firms pass on the most highly qualified candidates. I mean, it doesn't, or they just get better candidates than you. So, why would you be upset if you're just not the best candidate? So that's just so, it's all like the other thing people don't understand when you're looking for a job is that it all is like it's a numbers game. So all you're doing is just, you're trying to find a firm where there's not a lot of people like you that are applying. That means applying to firms without openings or applying to places and not always the largest markets. Good. What can I do in law school to show firms I understand their business priorities? So you can't really control a lot when you're in law school. So this is just kind of an important point when you're in law school is that most law firms that are going to be hiring you, so I'm just trying to see if I can pull this, but it doesn't really matter. Most law firms that are hiring you are just basically saying that we have enough work for this attorney coming out of law school, and this is the best attorney coming out of law school we can hire. So law firms are just businesses, so they will hire the person with the best qualifications coming out of law school. So if you're trying to apply to a prestigious firm, that firm's going to be much more likely to hire someone from a top law school that did well there, and that's really the only way that they have to evaluate most applicants. And then, do you interview with them well? So, if you're in law school, you just have to, you have to get the best job you can. The other thing in terms of understanding business priorities is law firms, when they're hiring when they're hiring summer associates or, out of law school, if you have some sort of interest or things that show that you're very interested in that practice area, like for however you do that, like the journals on your website, the experience you had as a summer associate in the law firm, if you were working as a volunteer or whatever in law school at a law firm in the summer. Everyone should try to get a job in a law firm if you want to work in a law firm in your second summer, even if you are volunteering and not getting paid. I mean, you need to position yourself as someone, but just business priorities, making sure you look like someone that wants to work in a law firm and then you want to work in that practice area is really the most important thing. So, next question. How can I tell if my practice area is still in demand or if I need to pivot to stay marketable? Okay, so everybody's marketable in every practice area. It doesn't matter what your practice area is. You just need to apply to enough firms to find someone that needs your skills. Practice areas that are in demand, it's kind of interesting. It's something to keep in mind. Litigation is always in demand. Law firms always need litigators, and everyone's suing each other all the time. So that's always in demand. Things like corporate transactional work can slow down during when the legal market slows down. They'll slow down, first to the largest firms. If you're not able to get a job in the largest firms, there's always going to be demand in smaller firms or in smaller markets. So every practice area is really always in demand, but you have to find places that are willing to hire you, even if your practice area isn't in demand. So that means applying to enough places. So an example would be like right now, patent prosecution for hard sciences people, which is like people that have electrical engineering or physics degrees or mechanical engineering, like those patent attorneys are not that marketable. And the same thing goes with patent attorneys that are life sciences, meaning they have degrees in biology or chemistry and that sort of thing. Those attorneys also at the moment are not that marketable. But that doesn't mean they're not marketable. It just means that there's not a lot of jobs for them. So how do they get jobs? They They apply to firms in smaller markets, or they apply to just a lot of markets and a lot of different firms, and they can all get jobs. It's just the question of like how many places are they trying to find, and they can always find someone that needs their work. And it's honestly, if someone's applying to enough markets and places, it's not that hard. So whatever your practice area is, you need to make sure that you're marketing yourself to enough places and trying to find buyers for what you do. Okay, how can I make my resume and cover letter in law school to stand out to law firms making long-term hiring decisions? You can. So, I mean, you can. So, the law school you go to is going to determine the caliber of firm that you can get into in most cases and your grades and so forth. That's all they can look at. That's all the larger law firms or even middle market law firms will look at. So how do you tailor your resume and cover letter to stand out for law firms making long-term career decisions? You have to look like you have some sort of interest in the practice area. So if you can do that in your resume, that's good. Sometimes people, you have to think about, what the types of firms you're applying to. So what is the practice area you want to be in? Yeah, many times if you're a law student applying to firms, you're basically just sending a resume and cover letter most of the time by just saying you want to work there, and that's it. And if you can do that, that's often enough. Now, if the law firm does a certain type of work in a certain practice area, and you have reasons for wanting to work in that practice area, you could have been an accountant in law school or required a law school and wanted to do tax law. I don't know, or you could have been in the healthcare industry and you have that in your resume and you want to work in a healthcare firm, or you could have been a teacher and have an educational background and want to work in an education firm. You could have been a whatever, I mean, scientist and want to do patent prosecution. I mean, so people that have things in their background that look like they would be someone that would commit to that practice area often looks good, but you don't always have that. So, how do you stand out as someone that's going to make good long-term hiring decisions? I mean, the best thing to do is just, you can note that, you make people think that in interviews that you're going to be a good, that you're going to stick around, that you really want to learn. And the thing for law students to remember, and this is extremely important, and most people don't think about this. Law students, I was the same way. They think about like, what is this law firm going to pay me? Like, how much am I going to make? Like, is this the best brand I can get a job with? And those are important things. I mean, they're important, and you obviously want to get a job in the best law firm you can. But really, your first 5 or 6 years out of law school, I think it's an amazing time because you're getting paid. Like you're actually getting paid money to be trained as an attorney in a practice area. Maybe you're a smaller market and doing multiple practices, but you're getting trained to do that. And once you have that training, whether it's in family law or corporate law or commercial litigation, like you always have that training. And so someone has trained you in a certain practice area, and you have that practice area and that experience and training that can last your entire career. Now you can go to better firms where you're going to work on larger clients and get better training. You can go to smaller firms where you can do only what your practice area and work. I mean, all sorts of things, but you can get that training. And it doesn't matter where you go to law school. There are so many practice areas that people can do, and people don't always think about like what are the practice areas I can do, like what is it, what will my career look like if I do like one practice area, another. And, just everyone should understand. I'll show you real briefly the BCG database, how many freaking practice areas there are. I mean, all these different things you can do. And it doesn't, and again, the best attorneys, like from the largest firms, will often choose these sort of, smaller practice areas. So, if you have experience in the beverage industry or whatever, you could apply to firms that have that alcohol and beverage practice area. I mean, there's all these types of bankruptcy you can do. You can do consumer bankruptcy and learn how to do that and start your own firm very easily. Or you can do, I mean, cannabis, I wouldn't recommend that. You can do construction law, which is extremely marketable, and you don't have to have the best qualifications to do it. Corporate, there's all these different types of corporate, and these are large firm practice areas. The highest paid attorneys in the country that build the most hours and make the most money are typically corporate attorneys and that have very good experience in asset management or private equity or securities. You can go into one of those practice areas. If you start at a smaller firm in those practice areas, you can often move to larger firms. I talked about education. Entertainment is a very difficult practice area to get into, but you can certainly do it. People do that all the time. And there's lots of different things there. It's not as stable of a practice area because a lot of times you're working in smaller matters. Environmental is a good practice area. There's all these different practice. Family law is a great practice area. Healthcare, you can do medical malpractice, you can do, I mean, all these different, or defense, immigration. Anybody can be an immigration attorney and start their own immigration firm. It's not too hard. You have insurance defense. Anybody can get a job in insurance defense, or get a job doing, trucking and auto plaintiffs and things. And personal injury attorneys make a lot of money. I mean, you have IP or labor and employment. You always have defense and plaintiffs work. Learning any of those is very, very useful. I mean, you have all these different types of litigation you can do, and it's just, and this is how we market candidates. We typically try to find someone with some sort of expertise in one of these. And if we find that person, then we can get someone a job. So if someone does plaintiffs liability plaintiffs, they can get jobs. With products liability defense, they can get jobs. I mean, having experience in these different practice areas can be very helpful. So you have real estate, then you have real estate foreclosure litigation, like all these practice areas people don't often think about. And so there's so many different places you can get jobs. Trust and estates, I told you, is an amazing practice area. You can make a lot of money doing that. And you can also, it's very easy to get jobs, start your own practice. So there's all these different places like a law student get a job for. So you can say, I'm very interested in plaintiff's work. You can say, I'm very interested in medical malpractice. You can say, I'm very interested in, mass torts plaintiff's work, or mass torts defense. I mean, you have all these different practice areas, and you can find firms in most markets to do one of these. So maybe you're in the construction industry or prior to law school, maybe you're a real estate, I don't know, but you pick something that, that if you try to focus things in a practice area and you apply to firms in that practice area, you're much more likely to get a job. Someone that's interested in that, someone that's not. But there has to be some reason you're interested in it, and you have to look like you're interested in it. So your resume hopefully will have indications that you're interested in that practice area somehow. I don't know how you would do it, but you'd have to tailor your experience and journals you might have been on, or grades you've gotten in classes related to that practice area. Just, whatever you can do to show that you're really interested in something. And that's going to make you someone that's more likely to get hired than if you're just trying to apply to the biggest law firms, then, that oftentimes, they're just going to kind of choose a practice area for you, unfortunately. But that's just kind of how it works. How can our law firm refine job postings and outreach to attract attorneys who align with our firm's long-term mission, not just short-term incentives? Well, I mean, your job postings, are going to be one factor in that. So job postings should mention, talk about the practice area that you're hiring for, to do outreach. You can do research of different attorneys in your market that do that kind of work, and then you can contact them with emails and things, or you can contact them on LinkedIn. Your firm's long-term mission, so you can certainly talk about that in your job posting. But in most cases, you would, try to, when you interview people, you would try to find people that are going to want to do whatever you do and commit. So yeah, you may have to interview a lot of people. Lots of law firm people that want to work in law firms will be more concerned about compensation, hours, remote work, and things. And whatever your firm does, when you interview people, you want them to show an interest in that. And most of the time when you're reviewing resumes that are coming in, the most important thing to look at is the person has the experience in your practice area. But even more important than that is that they look like they're going to commit based on their resume. And then just as important though is going to be why the person's looking for a job. And so people will look for jobs because they're losing their job. People will look for jobs because maybe they want to work in a firm that they can do more of the practice area for larger clients or get better experience and that sort of thing. So if someone really has a desire to work in your firm because it's a better fit for whatever they're doing, then that's usually a good choice. So you want people that have reasons for wanting to work in your particular type of firm. And if you can find those people, then you're going to be, much better off. Okay, another law school question. Let's see here. And again, I have some questions left, but I would encourage everyone right now, if you have any questions, just to ask them, because I will be out of questions in a little bit. Okay, what matters more to law firms when hiring from law school? Grades, experience, or perceived long potential? The most important thing when law firms are hiring from law school, assuming you're trying to work in larger firms, your grades and then the quality of law school that you're coming from. That's pretty much it for the larger firms. Grades, quality of law school. That's what will get you in the door. And then obviously your interviewing skills and so forth. your experience, you typically will not have experience. So, but what you can do is if you want to work in a certain practice area, a very smart thing to do would be to try to get experience in that practice area in your second summer. So what I recommend everyone do is if they're, I mean, it was interesting. Anyway, someone that I was very close to, doesn't really matter who they are. Someone that I was very close to wanted to do trademark law because her father had done some horrible trademark violation. The family had lost everything, had to move in an apartment from a equivalent of like a $10 million house today. And very passionate about trademark law. So she wasn't able to get a summer associate job in a large law firm in her second summer, but she was able to get sort of this job where she wasn't really paid, but working or maybe paid like $15 an hour or something, working for a trademark attorney in the Bay Area. And she didn't have particularly good grades in law school. There was nothing really that stuck out about her. She had a very good personality, but she got this job in her second summer, and then she applied to firms in her third year and was able to get hired by a major U.S. law firm doing trademark law and for a permanent position because she had that on her resume. So if you want to do a certain practice area, then you should try to get a job, even if it's a volunteer job, in your second summer, and law firms will like that. And it can often help you get into a much better law firm than you normally would. And if you don't work in a law firm during your second summer, then it becomes extremely difficult to get a position after law school. I mean, with a law firm, it's just much more difficult. So that's really one of the most important things, to try to get a job in your second summer. If you can do it in your first summer, even better, and try to get it in a certain practice area, because that shows a lot of interest in that practice area. And so law firms want to hire people that are interested in a certain practice area. So that's one of the most important things for law students. And again, that practice area could be anything. It could be immigration. It could be, trust in states. I know a woman that's probably considered one of the top by long margin immigration attorneys in the country. And she went to a fourth tier law school at night. And she went to this fourth tier law school at night, and she worked in her second summer for a woman that was a trademark attorney. And again, one of these 50, or no, immigration attorney. But one of these jobs, it was like $15 an hour or something. And she got there and she realized that she could do this work on her own. And when she graduated from law school, instead of working for an immigration firm, she literally started her own firm, and it very quickly took off, and she became extremely successful. Lives in a $5 million house, all this sort of thing. But so that's what you can do. You can become very successful in different practice areas by doing that in your second summer. So in your first summer, so you just you find something and you commit to it. And again, the practice area literally doesn't matter. Every practice area, you can have an incredibly good career. You can do it in family law, you can do it in corporate law, you can do it in commercial litigation. You really can do it in all these different practice areas, which is kind of exciting. So that's really the most important thing. And then you pick a practice area that you like to do that. So what are the practice areas? Like, how do you choose a practice area when you're a law student? So typically there'll be two, and this is actually goes for people that aren't law students too. But there's two types of people. There's people that are interested, usually that have a natural bent to be good at things that involve reading and writing and arguing even, and those people can become litigation attorneys, and because there's a lot of writing and talking and things, and people that are interested in human drama and all that kind of thing, those people could become any type of litigation. And there's hundreds of different types of litigation. So if that's what you're interested in, you can do it. You can do it as a personal injury attorney, you can do it as a defense attorney, and that's what you can do. And there's other people that are just very passionate about suing people and not defending people. And those sorts of people can become litigation attorneys. And by the way, I mean, if you're even whatever type of attorney you are, like, you have to be very interested in solving other people's problems. And if you're not, then maybe you shouldn't be an attorney. But that's kind of it's you have to be having interest in other people's problems. And then you have corporate attorneys, or people that do transactional work, which can be corporate, real estate, employment all this transactional work. And those people typically are more interested in math and science, and not as interested in human drama and reading and writing. So most people, almost everyone, is one or the other. You may say, oh, I'm good at both, but most people, their interests will lie in one thing or another. People that are interested in reading and writing, like reading books and discussing them, and that's kind of the personality. So you need to decide, what is your personality and what type of person are you? And, and then you choose it based on that because you're most likely to be good. That's going to be something that's important to you. Another law firm question. What early indicators during the hire process can help our firm identify attorneys who are likely to become future leaders of the firm? Okay, so the people that are likely to become future leaders are people that hopefully have employment stability. So they have employment stability, and whatever kind of offer you're making them in terms of compensation and stuff, they're likely to come there and stay there. And people that are likely to stay there are people that usually have employment stability. People that are likely to stay there also have reasons for being there. So the geographic area matches them, or the practice area is what they're looking for, and the type of work that you have is what they're looking for. And they're outgoing, or maybe they just seem like someone that is likely to generate business. Maybe they've written papers and things or whatever, given talks about your practice area. Maybe they are in associations and things that show that they could potentially get business. So anything that shows a commitment to your practice area, any strong reasons for wanting to work at your firm as opposed to others. Like if there's 10 firms in your city or 20 that do this type of work, or 50, like is your firm unique enough? Is that someone's likely to stay? And does that firm match their interest in a way that is gonna, your firm that's gonna override compensation and other things that are gonna make the person stay? So those are kind of the main things. And most people, will come across as someone like that. Connect with people. They're going to feel comfortable with your culture, like all those different sorts of things. And law firms make hiring decisions in a way that's no different than how do people make decisions about what mate to choose in terms of their, in terms of who they want to be with. I mean, woman wants to be with a man, she's going to make decisions based on her short and long-term goals. And this, if a woman wants to be with a woman, or a man wants to be with a woman, or whatever, I mean, people make these decisions in different ways. And so you just need to understand, like, how is someone, what kind of decision, are you going to make that's going to fulfill your long-term goals, and is that person likely to stay? So, an example would be if you're interviewing or going on a date and that person's been married 5 times and has been in 3 relationships in the past 2 years. I mean, that's probably not someone that's likely to stay unless there's some sort of really unique connection with the person that, that, again, you get the idea. Okay. How can I tell if a law firm values long-term growth or just needs someone to fill a short-term gap? So long-term, meaning your long-term growth, as opposed to just hiring you to do work for them until they run out of the work, or whatever. So every law firm that's hiring you will value you in the long term if you're providing enough value to them. And that's it. So law firms will keep you around to the extent you provide value. Law firms typically will only make you a partner if they're going to lose a lot of money not doing so. So that means maybe they can't find people to do the type of work you do. Maybe that means that you have business, which is most of the case. So law firms will keep you around to the extent you provide a lot of value. They do not make partners often if they don't have to. So that whoever they're making a partner, the benefits of doing that far outweigh the benefits of not, because that person could leave, all these sorts of things. So any law firm you work for will value you to the extent you provide value. But if they have a short-term gap and just some work, and then they just need you for that, unless you're providing more value than you're getting paid, and you figure out other ways to do that, you're not going to be able to keep your job. Almost out of questions. So see here, there's a couple more. So if anybody has any additional questions. Also, if you're logged into Zoom, I won't show your name. A couple of people are, and I'll just copy and paste the question. How can I improve my chances of getting hired by a top law firm if I didn't start your career in one? Okay, so people always start their careers in smaller law firms and get jobs in larger law firms. The biggest way you can do that is, you basically will be in a practice area. Well, I'll just show you how you do that. So let's see, real estate transaction. This is just a very common example. Transactional. Okay, so let's say you're in, I don't just market, I'll give you a random market, Madison, Wisconsin. And you start And you start your first year, and maybe there's 10 people, or maybe, yeah, so 10 first years doing real estate transactional, doing that. And then after two, there might be, seven, or let's say eight left. Then after five, there might be three left, or let's say four left. And then, let's say four left. And then, after six, maybe there's three. So the idea is that in every practice area, there's going to be attrition. And so if you choose like real estate transaction, you start off at a smaller firm. If a law firm in Madison has an opening for like a fourth year or something, after you've been out of school for 4 years, they might not receive any applications. They might receive one or two, because you'll be the only person in the market that does that. So if suddenly there's a hiring need at 5 years at a big firm, maybe only one person will apply to that. Who knows? But or maybe two. So the law firm won't have a lot of options. So whatever practice area you choose, you have to remember that over time there'll be attrition. But if you want to work in a big firm practice area, you have to choose a practice area that big firms do. So big firms do practice areas that are related to that are going to be company facing, as opposed to so company facing means big firms work on behalf of companies. They don't really work on behalf of individuals. I mean, they work on behalf of an individual that has a bunch of companies, but they'll work on behalf of companies. So you need to choose practice areas that where the law firms can bill a lot, where there's not going to be a lot of people like you, or where there's going to be attrition after a certain number of years and fewer attorneys like you. So pretty much any type of corporate practice area is company facing. So if you were to do that and you got out of law school, if the market was good or decent after 3 or 4 years and you were in a larger firm, then you could move to a larger firm. Often law firms will actually prefer people coming from smaller firms if they have openings at 3, 4, 5 years, because those people are likely to be hungrier. So if you have experience in a company facing practice area, you're much more likely to be hired. So company facing practice areas are all things that involve companies that will pay a lot of money. So environmental defense is one, land use and zoning, family law is not, ERISA is one, all forms of finance are practice areas like that, healthcare transactionals like that. So just think about immigration's not like that, family law is not like that, food and drug law of course is, but I mean, just think, insurance defense isn't like that, any type of insurance plaintiffs, all forms of intellectual property are like that, labor and employment, general, consulting, management, employer defenses like that. Any form of litigation where people are representing large companies. I think the most common one would be commercial litigation, which is basically companies suing each other. So if you want to go in a large law firm and you didn't get into one out of school, real estate transactional is one. You just need to choose a practice area where you're working on behalf of companies, and then understanding, I mean, anybody can get a job in a large law firm. Not everybody, but if you choose the right practice area, you can, because there's always going to be attrition in every market. The same thing is in New York City. I mean, any market, like as people get more experience, there's going to be fewer people left, because there's going to be attrition. People are going to go into other things. People might leave Madison. I mean, there's just all these different things. So if you choose a practice area where you're doing work on behalf of companies as opposed to individuals, and then you stick with that practice area, there'll be lots of opportunities at large law firms after you've been trained, which is usually 2.5 to 5 or 6 years, and you can move to larger firms. This happens to people all the time. I mean, it's remarkable, but anybody can get into a large law firm almost, if you get work in a company facing practice area. If you don't get into a large law firm, you can get into a really good middle market firm, but you have to do a practice area where you're working on behalf of companies and not individuals. And so that's how you do that. You can't do it like, I mean, insurance defense, you're representing insurance companies, but you're representing them auto accidents, things. You can't do that in that, but you can do it in commercial litigation. Just any time you're representing a company, you can move to a larger firm. Why do you want to work? This is actually a good question, and I'll just answer this real quickly. Why work on behalf of larger companies? So large law firms work on behalf of larger companies. The reason they do that is they can, pay bills endlessly. I mean, many of them. they'll just, whatever the law firm's charging, they can pay. So they'll just, if the law firm needs to staff a case with a lot of people, the client will pay it. And so you're kind of putting yourself in a situation where companies are just writing these checks, and they're big checks, and you're continually billing them and giving them advice, and they're willing to pay large fees, and they're willing to have lots of hours. And so that's why attorneys at the major law firms make, some of them millions of dollars. They make it because they're working on behalf of these companies that are endlessly writing checks. And so that helps you, because if you're working for a company that's endlessly writing checks, then there can be a lot of money there. That's how they can pay associates so much money. So you get into a practice area where you can represent companies that have lots of money to spend, and that will help you. Okay, I have one more question after this one. So if anybody has any additional questions, I would recommend answering them now. How do I break into a law career after 30 years in a completely different industry and just recently graduated from law school? I've submitted hundreds of applications to many different locations, but I'm not receiving many interview requests, close to 2%. I've tailored my resume based on the postings, but I don't seem to be getting my foot on the door. Yeah, so you just need to apply to as many places as you possibly can. Law firms will always hire someone there's so many law firms, that won't pay very much, so we'll hire someone. Or you can, you have to decide, like, what type of law firms are you applying to? Are you applying to large law firms? Are you applying to small law firms? If you're 30 years in a completely different industry, I'm assuming you're in your, mid-50s. I mean, that is, will make it a little bit more difficult for you to get a job, because people typically want to hire younger people, because if you've been doing something for 30 years, you're going to be hired by people that are probably younger than you. And the people that are younger than you are going to be more comfortable with the younger people, and people that are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed that they believe are willing to work really hard. So you're at a disadvantage, but really it's not that big of a deal. I mean, anyone can get a job. And so if you've got a 2% response rate, that's actually very good. So why is that good? So it's good that you're applying to all these places. So if you've got a 2% response rate, well, if you go check your mailbox today or sometime this week, you'll definitely have received solicitations for people to put in new windows in your house, to do roofing, to whatever. And then you might receive letters about investing with a different company or something, like hiring Merrill Lynch, who knows? But all these letters and things go out, and they don't get a very high response rate. All they need is one person to buy the windows, and maybe they make $10,000-$15,000 or whatever. So I don't know what it is, but I'm just saying that that's how it works. People submit, companies that are looking for business will contact thousands of people, maybe for one response. People advertise on television, they advertise on the internet. So everybody's looking for someone to do business with them. So there's nothing wrong with applying to a lot of places to try to get jobs. I mean, it's just, you should. I mean, that's great. So you're going to response rate. It means if you send more applications out, you're going to get a high response. I don't know what state you're in. It doesn't really matter. Let's say you're in, just take an example, like cities and municipalities, or whatever. Municipalities list based on population. Okay, so Texas cities based on population. So you have all these cities in Texas. So you have how many cities? I mean, any city of more than 10,000 people is going to have attorneys in it, and they'll have places that you can potentially work. So, I mean, let's pick another one here. Red Oak, Texas. So, you go to Red Oak, Texas, those law firms. You have all these firms in Red Oak, Texas. So all these different places, these are just in Red Oak, Texas. I mean, there's all these different places. You have these firms, and it's not a huge market. And then it's all these different, there's all these different attorneys that do bankruptcy in Red Oak, Texas. I mean, and this is just people that are paying to be on there. But I guess my point to you would be that wherever market you're in, there's going to be plenty of people that do the type of work, that do anything. Like, I mean, this is crazy. Like, this guy does product liability. I mean, we went to Red Oak, Texas, which again, I'm showing you is just one city. It's rated 173 in terms of the largest cities in Texas. And there's people there that do intellectual property. There's people that do every single practice area. So it's, again, the point here is it's not really going to be that difficult for anyone to get a position. All you need to do is apply to enough places, and that's right out Texas. I mean, maybe you want to do criminal law, maybe you want to do divorce or even real estate law. I mean, there's just people all over that do it. And what I would, encourage you to understand is in all these different all these different people that are in these smaller markets, whatever the market is, there's going to be, you can send them applications, and you can approach them, and I guarantee you that in just looking at Red Oak, Texas, I mean, just looking at Red Oak, Texas, I mean, there's going to be, these are sponsored, by the way, so let's go down here. There's even more sponsored. There's going to be people that will hire you, and so you apply to enough places, and if you apply to enough places, you're very, very likely to find people, because whoever these attorneys are in Red Oak, Texas, they're just not receiving a lot of applications. Because they're not receiving a lot of applications, if you apply to them, they're going to be interested in you because they're not getting a lot of applicants. So the market is just absolutely massive. In just in Texas alone, there's probably 20,000, 30,000. I mean, I'm sorry, not even 20, yeah, 30,000 attorneys, 10,000 plus law firms. I mean, anybody can get a job. So just because you applied to a bunch of places and got a 2% response rate, I mean, even if you were in Houston or San Antonio or Dallas, I mean, there's going to be thousands of people that do personal injury or do trust in the states or do real estate. I mean, there's just so many people. So it's nothing really to ever worry about if you want a job. You just need to apply to enough places. It's not, the whole idea of not being able to get a job or looking for a job, to me, is just crazy, because there's just so many possible places you can work. Okay, law firms consider someone who got a JD 7 or 8 years ago, but has never worked as an attorney. I've worked as a non-attorney in securities and international trade fields since law school, but want to switch my career to an attorney. Is that possible? Yes, of course it's possible. Anybody can get a job in a law firm. I don't know what type of work you want to do. It's international trade is probably a pretty difficult practice area to break into, just because there's not a lot of attorneys that do it. But in securities, there are going to be lots and lots of attorneys that do it. There'll be small firms that do things related to securities. When you look for a job, you just need to make it look like you've got a lot of. If you want to look for a corporate attorney job related to securities, then you would basically frame your resume as someone with a lot of securities experience that's interested in securities, and then try to find firms doing that. International trade, like I said, is going to be difficult. You can still do the same thing, but your resume needs to look like you're interested in that. Law firms are not going to necessarily, I mean, there's two questions here. One is for someone with 30 years of experience, the other is for someone that got a JD 8 years ago. All you need to do is just find people that will hire you, and they can be often in smaller markets or solo practitioners or people that do that. And if they see a resume and no one's applying to them, then then if they see a resume, they're likely to be interested in you. So and it depends on how much money you want to make, all sorts of things. But there's always people that will hire you. But there's probably, in terms of people that do securities related work in Texas, there's probably thousands of attorneys that do that. There's not going to be a ton of them compared to other practice areas, but if you're able to do research and look at every possible place you could apply to, then it's just a smart way to do a search. I mean, you could just say securities attorneys in El Paso, Texas, see what we get there. Social Security, Texas. I mean, there may not be very many in El Paso. I mean, that's kind of a small practice area, but yeah, I mean, you're getting in El Paso, Texas, you have this firm, Scott Hughes, that does securities work. So the point is that there's going to be securities attorneys in any market that you're interested in that's got a decent number of people. That will be securities attorneys. So here's seclawyer.com, Magnum and Associates. What the hell's this? Well, anyway, so the point is that wherever this is a very small firm. This is just this guy, Darren Magnum, doing securities work. If you send him your resume, I guarantee you that a lot of people are not sending him their resume in an unsolicited fashion. And you tell him you want to do it, and get trained, and he has the work, and he could give people work. He's not receiving a lot of applications. Then you have a very good chance of getting hired there. So that's all you do. I mean, it's not difficult for anyone to get a job. You just need to make sure that you're doing your search in kind of a smart way and applying to enough places. And so if you do that, you're going to, have a very good potential to get a position, which most people are not doing searches like that. And when I do searches like that for candidates, people get jobs. And all I do is find enough places where that will hire the person. And the market is just absolutely massive. There's just so many people that will hire you. All you need to do is apply to the right places and, preferably be focused on a practice area. So we looked at securities and we found a solo practitioner in El Paso that did it. You're going to find that solo practitioners in small firms, probably a lot more in the larger markets and San Antonio and things. And so there's plenty of opportunity out there. You just need to make sure you're finding the places. Okay, so thanks for everyone for being on this webinar today. I think it was hopefully you understood everything that I'm talking about, and I'm sure you did. But the main points I'd like you to kind of walk away from are that every law firm is making business decisions when they're hiring you. So you need to look like a good business decision. You look like a good business decision when you have reasons for working there, when you have employment stability, when it looks like that place, that you're going to work for is going to you're going to commit in the long term there and stay there. And just if the firm has the work, you're going to be a good business decision. Or if you're a partner, like you can make money from them. So everybody's thinking about how they can make money. And if you look like someone that can make the money, then you're a good business decision. And you're also making business decisions with your career based on the practice area, based on the training, based on, the pay, how much you're getting paid, based on the potential to move to a better firm, all these sorts of things, or to get trained in a certain practice area. So everybody's making business decisions. Attorneys don't think like that very often. Attorneys are typically not the best business people, but understanding that anybody that interviews you and talks to you is making a business decision, and you're making business decisions. Everything's about business. The more you think in terms of that, the better off you'll do. Okay, thanks everyone for being on the webinar, and I will see you next week. And one thing I would just say is even just learning what you learned today also is something that could change the direction of your career and your life, because most people don't understand this and they make bad decisions with their career. And most of these webinars, people will come back to me months or years later and say, I was in this one webinar or just did these webinars and I'm very successful because of it. And so what I talked to you about today can make you successful. So it's important for anybody to listen to people like me. It doesn't have to be me. You can listen to self-improvement books or, courses and things, but, learning this stuff and being someone that learns about your career and stuff is very rare. Most people don't take the time to, they take the time to learn a practice area and stuff. They don't take the time to learn things that are going to change the direction of their career and life, which you're doing. So it's very impressive. So thanks everyone for being on this call, and I will be back next week.